Let's take a tour around the machine. At the back of the machine you'll see two caps. These are the filling points for the tanks. These new generation machines run a smaller tank, so just be aware of that and don't overfill them. It'll cause you a lot of heartache. Usually on the build side you'll see this fuzzy growth when you take the cap off. Don't be alarmed, it's all normal and happens to every machine. Now down to the left hand side of the machine we have the cutter. The R66 has a different cutter than the T76. The R66 actually mills the material. Its motor spins the cutter via a rubber belt. These belts do wear, so just keep an eye on the belt's tension. If the belt wears or stretches, this will obviously not turn the cutter properly and will lessen your build quality. At the bottom of this clear tube you'll find the cutter. Each build this cutter should be checked for wax build-up. In the starter kit for the R66 there's a little dental mirror which makes it easy to check for wax. On the T76 there's a total different cutting system. Believe it or not, the cutting system on both of these machines play a huge part of build quality. The built-up wax on the cutter can actually burnish the part rather than cut it. One of the reasons the cutters get gummed up more than normal is the temperature of the room. They need a constant 22 degrees to keep them running properly. It's usually the support wax that gums the cutter, and this cooler room helps cure the support wax quicker. There's a couple of tips to help stop gumming of the cutter. One is to silicone spray the cutter. The other is to extend the cooling time in model works when you're slicing the job up. Now down to the rails. These bearings have a linear bearing system internally and don't need to be oiled. There are two rails running from right to left. This motion is the X motion. There's a small motor under the left hand side of the machine. This motor is the X motor. It drives a shaft via a belt, which in turn drives two other belts, one at the back and one at the front of the machine. The carriage is clamped to these two belts, giving it its X motion. The single rail that runs from the front to the back of the machine gives the machine its Y motion. Similar to the X motion, there's a small motor up on top of the Y carriage. This turns a belt which the jets are attached to, moving them in the Y motion. It's a good idea to keep an eye on the tension of all these belts. Again, it can relate back to poor build quality if they're loose. And last but not least we have the Z motion. The Z motor is located down inside the middle of the machine. It turns a screw mechanism via a belt to lower or raise the table in increments that have been set in model works to best suit the part that you're printing. In the back of the machine we have the tanks. There's the build and the support tank. They obviously store the wax. There's an air pump, one for the build and one for the support. These silicone hoses carry the air to the build and the support tanks. There are two pinch valves. These pinch valves pinch the silicone tube off when the air pump turns on, building pressure into the tank to pump that wax into the cup. At the end of the pump cycle, the pinch valves release the pressure on the hose, releasing the air pressure from the tank. This is the noise you'll hear during a side purge cycle. Each tank has three heating elements. There's two at the bottom and one at the top. This is the top of the filter which filters all the wax prior to going into the heated line. From the top of the tank, the material is delivered through this heated line. The heated line comes through to the front of the machine and joins up to the jet. The jet closest to you is the build jet and the one furthest away is the support. Now over to the right hand side of the machine. This is the paper tape. On the newer machines, the R66 and the T76, this paper tape is very, very important. When you're replacing this paper tape, be very, very careful you follow instructions on how to put the tape through. Something as simple as this can turn the machine into a real monster. The paper tape's pulled through by a motor at the back of the machine. This is called a stepper motor and is very accurate. The reason for its accuracy is it has to pull the exact amount of tape through when it's doing a calibration. If it pulls too much or too little tape through, it can hinder the calibration and cause the machine to have all sorts of problems. So from time to time, calibrate the stepper motor and its 10 inches it's got to pull through when calibrating. It's a real simple test, so keep on top of it and make your life easier. Inside this little silver box where the paper tape passes through is a sensor. This sensor is critical to the machine's setup. Wax can build up internally and really hinder the whole machine's output. If there is a wax build-up in the sensor, it's usually caused from when you wipe the jet and there's a little bit of wax that stands up proud from the paper, smearing itself on the internal components of the sensor. In the startup kit you receive with the machine, there's a package of long-handled cotton buds. These cotton buds are long enough to get right the way down into the sensor and keep it clean. While we're around this side of the machine, there's a couple of simple things to be aware of. You may have noticed there's a white sticker under the tape where the machine does its jet testing. Again, this is very important to the machine's calibration. There's a sensor on the underside of the build carriage, and prior to every jet test, this sensor reads the paper to make sure it's clean and white. The sensor can see through the paper tape, thus the sticker there to make it even whiter. This sensor also reads the crosses that the jet prints out to make sure it's running properly. I hope this tour gives you more insight into how the machine works, and in turn makes it a lot easier to run.